You're watching CT22 with Eric Parker, sponsored by Hartford Healthcare.
Welcome back. Last week at this time, Senator Richard Blumenthal was on the ground in Poland to see the reality Ukrainian refugees are facing fleeing their homeland for a future of unknowns. He's joining us today to share his experience there and offer his thoughts on the impassioned speech Ukraine's president gave in front of the entire U.S. Congress on Wednesday. Senator Richard Blumenthal joins us from Washington, D.C. Senator, thanks for being with us. We talked to you when you had been to Ukraine back in January, now to Poland to see the refugees. What did you make of that return trip to that part of the world?
I was so moved, Eric. You know, I went with a bipartisan group of colleagues, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, Rob Portman of Ohio and Roger Wicker of Mississippi, as well as Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. And we were moved to tears when we visited with the refugees coming across the border, all of them women and children, because the men are staying to fight. Tears in their eyes, terror on their faces, because many of them had just been through a bombing. Russian missiles hitting a town where they lived, just 12 miles away. The ground shook. And we were there just 12 or so, less than that number of hours afterward. But clearly, the refugees fleeing are a humanitarian crisis, millions of them coming to Poland, and also impressed by the Polish people who are opening their arms and hearts to these refugees, as you say, of an unknown future. But right now, what they need is food, clothing, shelter. And I saw some of the blankets and clothing that has been sent there, some of the medicine that's being provided. And I thought of the Ukrainian community, American Ukrainian community in Hartford and all around Connecticut, where I saw donated food being collected. So I think those donations are having an effect. I hope the people of Connecticut will continue to support them.
Well, I know one thing, it's one thing to help humanitarian and to help with the refugees, but you also spoke a little bit after you returned about the need to help out the people still in Ukraine and things like air support and arms. What do you think can be done? President Zelensky, in his speech to Congress, talked about a no-fly zone. I know you haven't committed support to that, as President Biden hasn't. Where do you draw the line, and how do you best help?
President Biden has begun the effort to provide more support, military tools that can give the Ukrainian freedom fighters a fair fight on the ground. Right now, those fighters will push Russian troops out of Ukraine if they have that fair fight, but they are dealing with a rain of terror from the skies in artillery, missiles, bombs. And I want more of the aerial defense tools, drones, aircraft batteries, anti-aerial weapons and tools, and even planes that they can use. And I think that those tools will enable them to turn the tide in the air to defend against the bombs and missiles that are coming at them, and likewise to the civilian targets that Putin has inflicted such destruction and death against. So I think that those kinds of tools need to be increased in number and sophistication so that the people of Ukraine can be better protected. And of course, they need humanitarian aid. I think we should consider an airlift through neutral countries, much as was done for Berlin, different circumstances, different kinds of airlift necessary. But if some of the neutral countries were willing to do airlifts of humanitarian supplies like food and medicine to those cities and towns that are besieged, but clearly Vladimir Putin has miscalculated the resistance, courage, resilience, and resolve of the people of Ukraine. And they have the capacity to win this war.
Do you believe Vladimir Putin has committed war crimes?
He has committed war crimes. The attacks on hospitals, maternity wards, residences, administrative buildings, and of course on a nuclear plant alone would constitute a war crime. So I think he needs to be held accountable. But the first and foremost task right now is to provide assistance to those millions of refugees who are crossing the border. I was just so moved by the the trauma and tragedy in their faces and voices. We spoke to many of them and served food to them from the World Central Kitchen, a great experience. They are people of incredible resilience. And I think aiding them and providing the military tools that President Zelensky needs to mobilize and muster the Ukrainian freedom fighters to win this cause.
We saw this week President Zelensky addressing the U.S. Congress, an impassioned address. Do you think that address bolstered his support within the United States Congress? We've seen some people certainly out on the right of things. People like Madison Cawthorn called him a thug. Tucker Carlson has said the government of Ukraine is corrupt. What do you make of his speech, and do you think it changed minds for people who do have their doubts?
I met President Zelensky just about 8 weeks ago. And I came away from that trip to Ukraine very, very convinced that he was underestimated, maybe by the world, but certainly by Vladimir Putin. And his speech, I think, embodied the qualities that have made him a world hero. His courage, determination, clear-eyed insight into the perils ahead. For him personally, he is under literally potential attack every day, as are his people. But I think impassioned is the right word, and impactful. I think it has helped strengthen our case for more aid for him and his great country to counter the thug here, who is Vladimir Putin. He is a KGB thug. He understands only force, military force, and economic force. And I think he helped me in the case that I'm making. I literally was on the floor of the Senate the night before last with Rob Portman and Roger Wicker, two Republicans, to make the case for more military aid, but also tightening the economic sanctions so that Vladimir Putin will be deprived of access to the world financial system. Right now, he still can do it through some of his banks. We need to tighten that vice so as to deprive his war machine of the resources that it needs to conduct this war, along with the military aid, stronger economic sanctions against the real thug here, who is Vladimir Putin. And the Russian people, if they knew about what was happening in Ukraine, I think would turn against him.
All right, Senator Richard Blumenthal, we have to leave it there. We're all out of time. We appreciate you being with us. Tell us about your trip to Poland and your reaction to the speech. We'll have you back here on CT22 again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.